Representative Jesse Topper, Minority Leader in the PA House. What are the responsibilities that come with your new job?
Larry, I think all of us who have been, this will be my coming into my 12th year. Certainly when you've been around, you think you know what's involved in leadership, but you really don't know the quantity of everything involved. But being a leader, not only do you help cast vision in terms of the caucus when it comes to policy objectives, but you also, work with the HR. You work with all of the staff throughout the entire caucus, from communications to our legislative assistants to district offices. You basically manage each part of the caucus from a functionality standpoint, and then again, also work with members and the leadership team to develop policy objectives. And then you're also the floor leader. You're going to be involved in the debates on the House floor. Parliamentary rulings, those kind of things. And as you know, as we're doing right now, you're also somewhat of a caucus spokesperson for the press. So a lot of those jobs that, again, you kind of figure when you get in, that you know what you're going to do, or you know exactly what a leader does. But until you get into the role, I don't think anybody anticipates the quantity of all of those things that you absorb once you come into a role like this.
Yes, expand on that if you would, Representative, as far as the quantity is concerned and how it relates to legislative matters and what you were used to as a rank and file member of the House.
All right. I mean, I think the last 2 years as the Republican chairman of the Education Committee, you certainly are put in situations where you have to ensure that all members of the committee on both sides are heard. You're taking input, you're taking suggestions, but at the end of the day, you have to be the one making the call. Are we going to support this? Is there going to be a split vote? How are members going to talk about their vote back home in their districts? Are you giving them the tools in which to do that? And then the actual policy itself. Is there a moment, particularly in the minority, where you're able to negotiate maybe some of your policy ideas into a bill, or is it a moment where you simply have to be the vocal minority saying that this is a bad idea and we all need to be against it? Knowing how to make those decisions, I think it really helped me being a chairman in this prior session, and now that's just on a larger level. There's a larger scale, if you will, of those kind of negotiations. You're going to be in rooms as a leader that you weren't going to be in as a rank and file member or even as a committee chair. And in those rooms will be critical decisions that will be made in regards to budget negotiations and policy negotiations.
Now, you've gone on the record saying kitchen table issues are important to Pennsylvania residents. Give us some examples.
Sure. I mean, that's what we heard in this, not only this last election cycle, but I think that's what we've been hearing in our districts. People need more money in their pockets. I mean, that's the bottom line. You go to the gas station, you go to the grocery store, you try and order Christmas presents right now, and you wonder, do we have the money to not just pay for this, but also to be ready for some kind of an emergency? I had a constituent in a local convenience store the other day who's an employee there, and she said, Jesse, I consider my family middle class. We've always been middle class. We've never been hurting for money. But right now, we're one bad thing away from being almost broke, whether it's a boiler breaking or a car breaking down or needing a new roof. This is now putting the kind of strain on families' individual economies that is putting the strain on the overall economy. So that's what people are talking about. They just want to know how they're going to be able to afford their cost of living moving forward. And what can we do about that? Well, we can give them some of their money back. If we continue to get surpluses at the state level, we need to look at how we can restructure our tax code so that we're giving money back to folks. And we also have to look at bringing down costs, energy production. I mean, energy, whether you're talking to a business or whether you're talking to a family, energy costs are really driving the inflation of their pocketbooks right now. So we have to look at how we can bring that down. I think those are two major factors in moving this economy forward here in Pennsylvania.
How much does the House majority and the minority see eye to eye on what's important?
Well, I've always said identifying the problems is not really where the partisanship comes into play. I think we can all identify the problems that I just outlined.
Mm-hmm.
It's identifying the solutions that become, a little more problematic. But that's okay. I mean, that's the way government works. You're supposed to have, ideas from all different spaces. You're supposed to have great debate about great challenges and how to fix them. That part, I don't think we should shy away from.
Mm-hmm.
I think the overall tone of our partisanship certainly needs to be looked at and be addressed, because at the end of the day, we are expected to govern. We do have divided government in Pennsylvania, from the administration to the Senate to the House. So we have to find a way to fix these problems. Otherwise, the voters are going to get people in who they feel will, one or the other.
At this stage, Representative, how much is known about the new legislative session that starts in January?
I would anticipate that the governor will continue talking about his priorities that he has over the past couple of years. But I do think the last election results that we just witnessed a few weeks ago have caught everybody's attention about the issues that are important. So not saying those issues weren't important before, but I certainly think you have to put them on the front burner now if they weren't. And again, that comes down to putting money back in people's pockets so that they can drive their local economy, and that ultimately we can see our state economy flourish. And look, we have to address the demographics issue in Pennsylvania. One of our largest growing sectors are retirees. We understand that. We have to find a way to keep young people residing and working in this Commonwealth. And that starts with creating a climate that they want to stay in. And I don't mean the climate because of the weather, Larry, because obviously if you've got some other choices in the country, that might Pennsylvania might be in a little bit of the behind in that race. Although I'm a guy that likes all four seasons, I don't know if I want to be hot all the time. But while the weather might play against us in states like Florida and South Carolina, we have to make sure that our business model and our tax structures do not.
When the new legislative session does get underway, Representative, did the last session offer any clues as to what the majority is going to emphasize?
I think it did. I mean, I think we agreed at times with the majority party again in some of the issues. For instance, I'll talk about education, because that was one I was deeply involved in. We all said the same thing, that every student in Pennsylvania deserves access to a high quality education regardless of their zip code. We agreed on that. It was a priority for both caucuses and for the administration and for the Senate. The problem came when the majority party decided that it was just simply going to look at the funding component and not some of the reforms that needed to go along with that funding. I think we, as the minority party, even last session, were able to push some of those reforms. And I think in some areas we were able to find compromise. And then there were some areas that we were not. And I think it hurt the process overall. But I would anticipate education will be, once again, a hot topic. I think energy, again, the production of energy, the cost of energy, the regulatory environment around energy production, that has to be on the table moving forward, or else we're going to continue to see a decline in that industry, even though we sit on some of the most fantastic natural resources in the country. So we have to be able to take advantage of that at a maximum capacity. I think that will be, on the front of everybody's minds. If it's not on the majority party's list now, it will be soon.
You were talking about education funding just a minute ago. Let's take a step back in that discussion and consider your role as a member of the commission that mapped out funding strategies for education. As far as you're concerned, what were the major accomplishments there?
I think we were able to identify that the way we've done it for years is simply not working anymore. We have a system that was set up to work in the industrial age. We need to be more dynamic and more creative in how we stretch our resources. And I don't just mean our financial resources. We all agreed that we have a teacher shortage, particularly in certain subject matter areas. I can't create science teachers out of the blue. We have to figure out how we can stretch the folks that we do have to be able to do more, whether it's teaching across district lines, whether it's bringing people in from the private sector quicker on a faster track so that they have the ability to come in and to teach, incentivizing kids out of school to teach and teach in the areas that we need them to teach in. There was a lot of consensus around the topic of recruiting and not just recruiting, but mentoring and supporting educators throughout the Commonwealth, whether they're working in a cyber charter, a charter school, a traditional public school. We need more great teachers, and we need to incentivize the teachers that we have and the educators to be great. So that was an area where we were able to not just devote some funding, but we were able to see some reforms. But look, there's still work to do, particularly in the realm of choice. Every parent needs to have a high quality choice for them to send their children. In many cases, that choice will be the traditional brick and mortar public school that's in their community, which means we need to make sure that school is doing everything that they can do to be the very best they can be. And then for the kids that a traditional public education doesn't work for, they need to have high quality options as well. And I think that's an area where, even though we agreed and we succeeded in some areas of the funding component and the new formula, I still feel like that's an area that we left some policy on the table.
It sounds like you're talking about charter schools here in Pennsylvania, and how closely are we monitoring their progress?
I think that's part of it. We had some of the most, not just some of it, we had the most significant cyber charter reform in any legislation and in any budget for the last 20 years take place. So I think that the General Assembly and the governor showed a willingness to ensure that those are high quality options as well. And we took a great step in that direction. And for many kids, that is an element of choice that they need. Look, we've also looked at the EITC, the Educational Improvement Tax Credits, and the Opportunity Scholarship Tax Credits to help kids get to maybe a private education that would be best suited for them if the traditional public education isn't working. We can do more in that space as well. So not just the public schools and the public charter schools, but private schools, homeschooling, all of those need to be options that are quality options for parents to make those decisions.
And Representative Topper, I think you'll find this question to be about a familiar bottom line during discussions about education, and that is, how has the distribution of education funding dollars been made more equitable, especially with regard to any progress you made on this commission you were a member of?
Look, we have a new formula in place. I think that formula and the way we're getting the data for that formula was a compromise, but I think it was a good compromise overall. And I think you're seeing, I believe it passes the muster of what the court said was needed to be more equitable. It's just now a matter of, how many dollars flow through that formula. Do we have to have different silos for different dollars, such as our career and tech education centers and other places that we know we need to address? But I do think the new formula was a very good first step into meeting the court's order.
I understand one of your priorities has to do with regulation in Pennsylvania. And tell us why. What kind of harm is being done by the way the regulation process is carried out today?
Losing business, we're losing jobs, and we're losing families because of the regulatory burdens here in Pennsylvania. And again, when we talk about competing with Florida and Texas and South Carolina, heck, when we talk about competing with Ohio and even in some cases Maryland, West Virginia, New York, our border states, we find ourselves to be in a position where we are the state that businesses are looking at saying, I'm not sure if I want to do business here. I'm not sure if I want to come here. I'm not sure if I want to develop here. That's jobs. That's workforce development. That's our kids looking around saying, I can't do what I want to do in Pennsylvania. I'll go somewhere else to do it, which then affects our age demographics. And that all stems from, in my opinion, from regulatory, overburdened regulatory systems here in Pennsylvania. So that if we're not looking at that, then we're not really serious about expanding our workforce and driving our economy in Pennsylvania.
Earlier, you talked about putting more money back in the pockets of Pennsylvanians. So keeping that in mind, any good news or ideas for taxpayers in Pennsylvania?
We have to look at reforming the way we tax our citizens here in PA. I mean, we cannot just continue to tax and tax and tax and create more programs and say that we need to fund them. At some point, we have to decide, are we going to start looking at some of these taxes that were never meant to be permanent? For instance, the accelerated sales tax that we put on particularly small businesses where they have to pay an estimated sales tax because at the time during Governor Rendell's administration, there needed to be a quick cash grab because the Commonwealth's finances were strapped. It was supposed to be temporary. It's still going on. It's extremely burdensome. Most businesses end up paying more taxes than they need to. We need to continue to reduce the corporate net income tax. And those are taxes on businesses. We also need to look at how do we get money back into people's pockets, whether it's through a rebate program, whether it's identifying that the years that we have surplus, a certain amount of that needs to go back into the pockets of the people who paid it in the first place. I'm willing to look at all kinds of options, but nobody can argue with the fact that our tax code needs restructured and reformed.
And as you know, Representative, it's more difficult these days to buy a house because prices are up, the supply is down. So how might we go about addressing a housing shortage?
We have to have more people that want to buy houses. I mean, again, it comes back to that demographics issue where
let's say they want to buy houses, Representative, but they simply can't afford them.
Right. I think you're seeing the cost of inflation. You talk to folks who are building the homes. It costs more. It costs more to put in an air conditioner. It costs more to put in appliances. Everything simply costs more. Until we see the price of what actually makes the houses come down, until we see those costs of the people who are building the houses, moving the homes comes down, then I think you're going to continue to see inflation kill those who want to, particularly first homeowners who are trying to look for that first initial house in a good neighborhood with a good school, with a low crime rate. All of those things play a part in it, Larry. It's not, just the money and the inflation, but it's, what kind of neighborhoods do they want to move into? How secure is it? What's the crime rate like? What are the schools like? When you move Pennsylvania forward in all those areas, everything becomes more affordable. And again, if they have more money in their pockets, then they can afford a little more.
How are your priorities any different than your predecessor, Brian Cutler?
I don't know that they're any different from Leader Cutler's. I really appreciate all the work that he did in terms of managing the caucus. Remember, Brian was the leader through COVID, one of the most difficult times in our Commonwealth's history, did a remarkable job in adapting to everything that came up during those days and months and even years. So look, I think from a standpoint of priorities, we see a lot of things the same way, but sometimes there just needs to be a change. Everybody needs that change. Those who are in leadership, those who are looking to leadership. I think that's what you see here. But in terms of the tenets of what we believe will drive the economy in Pennsylvania, I don't think you'll see much of a change.
Representative Topper, I'd like you to respond to a headline that appeared in the Center Square recently. It reads, "Election fatigue leaves legislative priorities vague for now." How do you see it?
We don't have time for election fatigue. I mean, everybody's got a little bit of it, but at the end of the day, when I talk to members, they're excited about getting back in and getting to work on the policy that they know is going to transform their neighborhoods and their communities. I think there's a certain amount of election fatigue in the public. I think people are a little more concerned these days about what the decisions they make might appear on the next campaign mailer. We can't operate in that world. We're here to do a job. We're here to govern. I'm not here to worry about my next election. And so that's I think that's the model our caucus is going to adopt, which is we're going to show up to work every day, trying to make things better for the people of Pennsylvania, and the elections will take care of themselves after that.
Last question, Representative Topper. What's it going to be like working with Majority Leader Bradford in your new capacity? Try to give us some insight.
Look, Leader Bradford is a talented leader, talented floor leader. He debates well. But we fundamentally disagree on a lot of the solutions that we think Pennsylvania needs to adopt to get us out of these challenges. I'm sure those debates will be highly entertaining for some, but I also think they're going to be very substantive because there are real substantive differences. In terms of the two of us, I think when there are times that we can work together, we'll be able to. I think we have that kind of relationship, and I look forward to finding the common ground when we can find it. And on the times we can't, I know that we will both work on behalf of our caucuses to advance the policy objectives that we want to see. So look forward to it.
Representative Jesse Topper, Minority Leader in Pennsylvania House, thanks for your time.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it, Larry.